You lie in bed, eyes wide open, looking up at the ceiling, unable to relax. The smell of stale clothes in the corner and the day-old lasagna on the stove across the room have married to create a smell that leaks into every area of your one-room apartment. It's not what keeps you up, though. The phone starts to ring, and you already know who it is. The only one who calls you, the police station. There's been a reported rape at the Landmark Hotel down by the bay. Officer McKenna will be dispatched to meet you there. He'll be in plain clothes, and so should you. Why, you ask? The hotel manager is asking for discretion. You tell them you'll be right on it and place the phone on the receiver. Sitting up on the side of the bed, you stare down into the darkness that engulfs the floor. Is this all there is to your life? Working cases that go nowhere and coming back to this cluttered mess of an apartment. Why not just cut and run? Start over somewhere different. Become someone new. You run your hands through your hair and with a deep sigh resign yourself to do the case. You don't have the money to start over and you're not going to be able to sleep anytime soon. You turn on the lamp by your bed and reach for the whiskey bottle sitting beside it. Empty. Maybe the liquor store around the corner is still open. You look over at the clock and see that the time reads 11 p.m. Just closed. What luck. The road to the landmark is a private drive off the main highway. It's lined by oak trees which also serve to block passers-by from seeing the hotel at all. As you come out of the small forest, you're greeted by a grand structure. The hotel stands 3 stories tall with massive Corinthian columns lining the front. An ornate fountain with 2 stone lovers embracing at its center greets you as you pull around the circle drive to the front. You see McKenna standing at the entrance of the hotel. He's wearing a trench coat and fedora. Thought they asked for discretion. He greets you as you exit the vehicle, face beaming with excitement. You return his smile with a cold question about the location of the crime scene. He ushers you into the hotel, fumbling with a camera and notepad he has brought with him. As you pass through the massive lobby, you note portraits of antebellum aristocrats on the wall. The red and white oriental carpet is faded with foot traffic and reeks of nicotine. McKenna tells you the victim has been placed in another room and the crime scene is ready for you to examine. The two of you walk towards the room and you notice the desk clerk's eyes following you as you pass by him. At first you try to hold his stare, but turn away at his persistence. Upon entering the large room, the smell is overwhelming. Sweet and pungent, the odor permeates the air. Smells like ether. Good thing you didn't have that drink. McKenna asks if you want him to open the window, but you tell him to wait. The two of you need to maintain the integrity of the scene. You first notice the ropes tied to the bedposts and a pair of ladies' underwear crumpled on the sheets. Near the underwear you see a stain, possibly seminal fluid, but it's dried up now. No blood mixed with it either. Some wool fibers are on the bed as well, maroon in color. McKenna calls to you that he's found a footprint on the windowsill. It's facing as though its owner were entering the room from outside. You tell him to take a picture and measure it. He'll need to dust the fingerprints around the window frame as well. Looking back to the bed, you see a tan leather strap lying on the floor. It has a buckle and notches, but it's far too small to fit around anyone's waist. There's also an object sewn into the strap, circular. After some searching, you tell McKenna to finish up here and meet you in the lobby. At the front desk, you notice the clerk is wearing a maroon wool jacket. It doesn't smell like the odor in the victim's room, though you do get the hint of cologne trying to mask an unsavory stench. You notice the lapel on his left breast pocket, M. Rowland. You ask Rowland who was working on site at the time of the reported incident. He stutters at first, but admits it was he, the chef, the resident gardener, a couple of maids, some waitstaff for the restaurant, and the manager. Pretty light staff for such a big place, you respond. He answers more firmly, stating that the hotel tries to maintain a tight budget. At what time did he become aware the alleged rape occurred? Around 8 p.m. You pause and wonder to yourself why they delayed reporting of the incident. You continue asking if anyone else with this type of uniform was here tonight. No, only desk clerks are allowed to wear this uniform. His answer has an air of defiance and pride, you think. And what is it that he actually does, you question? As though he were listing out the achievements of a war hero, Roland starts rambling about his duties: checking in guests, bringing the luggage to the rooms, assisting with food delivery, arranging transportation, planning outings, and setting times for physicians' meetings. You ask about the last item, and he looks at you sternly before explaining that the landmark is famous for its wellness offerings. Guests from all over come to Gulf Breeze to be seen by physicians the landmark regularly contracts. It's been the hotel's trademark for the last 5 years. You ask to see the other desk clerks' coats, but Roland tells you all uniforms are taken home by the workers to cut down on cleaning expenses for the hotel. As he is finishing up the last answer, the manager of the hotel emerges from his office. He rushes over to you, introducing himself as E.G. Calder. Calder apologizes for the delay, but he was on the phone with the owner of the hotel about the incident, Mr. Silas Banyan. He pauses for you to recognize the name, but you ignore the importance of it and ask him to take you to the victim. He begs you first to come to his office for a chat. You notice his suit is woolen as well, but a dark green. This Banyan must want his employees to suffer. You can't imagine wearing something like that in the Mississippi summer. Calder's office is a cramped space in comparison to the rest of the hotel. A mahogany desk and some leather chairs are the only furniture in the room. Nothing like the expansive lobby or the stately room of the victim. Calder has a pile of papers neatly stacked on his side of the table, and a bookshelf is inset in the wall, though it is barren except for a liquor decanter and some glasses. A safe sits behind the manager's chair on the wall. He asks for you to sit, but you prefer to stand. Not wanting to be rude, he remains standing with you, though he offers you a glass of cognac. You want to accept, but refuse. You can always go to Reggie's after this is over. Calder wants to make sure that you are as discreet as possible in handling this matter. The victim's grandmother, Florence Ryder, had already made a big enough scene at the time of the incident was discovered. And how was it discovered? The manager says he was there with her. They found the girl, Miss Lily Ryder. The door was locked and the grandmother had forgotten her key. She couldn't find Mr. Rowland, so he assisted with opening the door. She kept ranting about weird noises she had heard coming from inside the room when she first came back. When he unlocked the door, that's when he saw Miss Lily, lying on the bed, convulsing, arms and legs tied to the bedpost and a leather strap wrapped tightly around her neck. Calder also confessed that he saw her underwear had been removed, but he assures you he made no inappropriate glances. In fact, he rushed right over and started untying her and got the strap off her neck. She immediately started to calm down after that. Mrs. Florence, though, she started screaming and ranting and demanding that Calder call the police. And why didn't he, you ask? Calder shot back that he hadn't known that a crime had been committed. You feel your brow wrinkling with confusion. Well, she didn't tie herself up, did she? He cowers at your response and then puts forth that she was probably tied up by Dr. Davids. Who is Dr. Davids? One of the physicians the hotel uses from time to time. He's a mentalist specializing in calming the mind and removing negative energy from his clients. Your expression turns to bewilderment, and the manager confesses that he doesn't believe in it either, but the man has helped people in the past. Or so that's what the clients say. Well, where is Davids now? Missing, Calder responds, his eyes now looking down at the carpet like a child preparing for a scolding. And you didn't think that was worth reporting immediately? You say loud enough that Calder flinches and begs for you to please keep your voice down. He tells you that a doctor who was dining at the hotel checked over Miss Lily and found no evidence of rape. The two of them must have been practicing some kind of... He doesn't want to go further with his statement. He assures you the hotel only called the police because Miss Florence was so insistent. Calder hopes that by talking with you, she'll see that this was all a misunderstanding. For a moment, you just stare at the man, long enough that Calder slinks over to the bookshelf, picks up the decanter, and shakily pours a glass. After he downs it, you tell him you'd like to see the victim now, but also to have any documentation about this Davids as soon as possible, and the name of that doctor as well. Mr. Calder takes a breath and, putting on a brave face, assures you he'll have it all ready for you, and the two of you head towards the victim's new accommodations. The room the women now occupy is much larger, a suite. A maid greets you as you enter and introduces you to an irate Miss Florence. The elderly woman is hysterical with rage and wondering where you've been this whole time. She paces a steady path through the sitting area, threatening several legal actions against the hotel. Her gray hair tosses with every turn she makes, and her face looks hardened and coarse, each wrinkle tightening with every word. Miss Lily sits silently in a lounge chair near the window, looking out towards the bay. You can see the marks on her neck and wrist from across the room. You inquire about the doctor who checked Lily out. Florence is the one to respond, calling the doctor a charlatan. Barely looked over the girl and wrote the whole thing up as a lover's misadventure. Can you believe that? Accusing her Lily of willingly participating in an act like that. Her words thunder out of her mouth with rage. She wishes she could go back to Missouri tonight, but wants to know if anything is going to be done by you and your lazy police department first. You tell her you're going to do everything in your power to bring the man to justice, a remark that earns a scoffing grunt from Florence. Lily just sits in silence, unmoved by the entire commotion, stoic. You ask about David's. What did he look like? Oily dark hair, slicked back like a car salesman with a thin mustache to boot, Florence puts in. Lanky, tall physique and a mole below his left eye. His eyes, they were darker than brown, almost black. Skin was darker than hers, too, more olive-toned. His accent was southern, but not like most of the folks she had interacted with around here. The maid confirms this as she had interacted with Davids a couple of times as well. She couldn't pick up the accent either, though, as she has only worked here for a few months. Florence goes on telling you she and Lily met Davids via the hotel's physician contracting service. She had heard about the landmark's success with mentally strained individuals from a friend back home. That friend's granddaughter had suffered a similar mental fatigue as Lily, and the physicians at the landmark had done wonders for her. That was about 7 years ago. You ask about the similar situation. A nasty divorce. Lily's ex-husband was abusive and a philanderer. The way he treated Lily, it completely wrecked her life. Florence's too. And where were Lily's parents in all of this? They died several years ago. Florence is her only relative. So what did David say was his specialty? Mental nervosis, she spat out. It was all a bunch of lies if you ask her, and the landmark is going to pay for it. You watch. You try to get her refocused by asking about the first interaction with David's. It was yesterday. They had agreed to do the first session in the ballroom of the hotel. He brought that leather strap with him, placed it around Lily's neck. She starts weeping and apologizes, saying she just keeps seeing Lily how they found her. You give her a moment to catch her breath and try to gauge Lily's reaction to all of this. Still nothing. Florence continues, saying Davids gave Lily some kind of liquid from a small vial. She had asked him about it, and he said the device and the liquid would interact, and it should break Lily out of her mental haze. For a while, Lily was back to her normal self. She conversed with Davids and Florence with no problem. For about an hour, it seemed as if a miracle had happened. When he took the strap off, though, she slowly reverted back to her previous condition. Davids claimed the procedure was a reset of her mind and emotions. He'd done this many times before and promised that only 2 or 3 more attempts would be enough for her daughter to return to normal. He would just need the opportunity to be alone with her. The ballroom was too populated and the space too big. It was interfering with the energy fields. You ask if any money had changed hands after that session. No. He promised he would take no money until full results were evident. Was there anything of value missing from the room after they found Lily? No, though a pendant of hers, a blue sapphire on a silver chain, had gone missing shortly after the first session. She thought it was one of the maids at first, but now she's not sure. You look towards the maid for her reaction, but she just stands there, looking worn out. Where was Florence when the incident occurred? She had gone for a walk around 7 p.m. when David's arrived. The session was supposed to last for an hour, but she had forgotten her medication. She returned to the room around 7:30 p.m. and found the door locked. She searched for her keys but couldn't find them. She could hear muffled sounds from inside but couldn't make them out. She knocked on the door and asked for them to open it. There was silence, and then rustling, and silence again. Nobody came to the door. She knocked and knocked. No answer. So she went to the clerk's desk, but he wasn't there. One of the maids, this one, right here, was passing and immediately got the manager. Florence stops long enough to gently take the maid's hand and offer a grateful smile. You recall to her that she said the incident had taken place at 7:30 p.m. Why does she think that there was such a delay in calling the police? Because the manager didn't want to call them. He doesn't believe Lily was raped. He doesn't care if she was raped. He only cares about his little hotel that he's running here and that owner that he keeps talking about, Mr. Banyan. Well, Mr. Banyan's going to pay when she gets a hold of her nephew. Negligence cases are his specialty. Once she mentioned legal action, he finally phoned the police. You thank the ladies for their help and promise to keep them up to date on the progress of the case. Florence reiterates she wants David's caught, and she'll stay so she can identify him if need be. You wish them good night and head back to the lobby. You approach the desk clerk and tell him to get Mr. Calder. You want to see the file on David's and follow up on the delay in reporting the incident. Unfortunately, Mr. Calder has gone home. His wife called and stated she felt unwell. You give the desk clerk a stare which he returns right back at you. He's got more nerve than Calder. You ask if Calder has left a file for you. Roland's stern face forms a smirking grin as he tells you, no. Perhaps Mr. Calder forgot in the rush to get home. You want to go look inside his office, but Roland tells you that's not possible. The personnel file that you're looking for will be in the safe, and only Mr. Calder has the combination. You'll just have to wait until he returns in the morning. Frustrated, you turn your inquiries on Roland. Why wasn't he at the desk when Mrs. Florence came back? He had a room service request around that time. She must have just missed him. You ask to see his log sheets for such requests, but he confesses that in all of the commotion afterwards, he had forgotten to log it. You ask for the room number, but he tells you he can't remember and really doesn't have time for this right now. He has to check on an order for tomorrow. Before you leave, you tell him you want to see the suspect's room. Roland huffs, but agrees to take you out there as long as you're quick. David's is staying in the servants' building on the back of the property. That's where they house the contractors and on-call employees. David's room is small, with a cot on one side and a desk and chair on the other. His belongings, if he had any, are not present. You check inside the desk. Nothing. Roland starts to become agitated and asks if you could hurry it along. People need to rest. You glare at Roland, but he holds his defiant stare. You tell him to have all the staff line up in the hallway and you'll interview them at once. As he goes off, you take one last look around and notice a small vial on the floor beneath the cot. It's empty and cracked, but there seems to be some kind of residue in it. You wrap it in a handkerchief and stow it away in your coat pocket. Back in the hallway, you ask if anyone had seen David since after 7:30. Nothing of use is reported. The gardener said that he had heard someone run in the house around a little after that time. They didn't stay long, though, and he didn't think to go looking to see who it was. Roland asked if you're satisfied but you ignore him. You thank the employees and physicians for their help and head back to the hotel, making sure to give a bit of your shoulder into Roland as you pass by him. After returning to the hotel, you tell McKenna to stay on site till the morning in case someone fitting the description of the suspect should return. After a brief stop at Reggie's, you schlep back into your apartment around 2 a.m. The stale lasagna greets you as you enter, causing you to gag and rush to the bathroom. Thankfully, nothing comes up. You stick your head in the shower and run some cold water over it. The chill of the water feels refreshing on your head and neck, and you feel like you could stay here all night. But you need to sleep. You stumble back to the bed, plopping down and hoping that it doesn't happen. But it does. The case. It comes straight to the front of your mind. You can tell it's going to end up going nowhere. But don't they all? Rapes, spousal abuse, indecent exposure, pervert cases. This one especially has little chance of being solved. A victim who is mentally unwell and unable to give evidence. A hotel staff that is more concerned with their appearance than helping your investigation. A grandmother that is focused on revenge. You think of Lily sitting in that chair looking out the window, face focused as though it were beyond the horizon of the bay. Her eyes devoid of emotion or thought, but did they lock with yours for a moment, or was that your imagination? You turn off the light and pray for no more phone calls until the morning and try to fall asleep. Early the next morning, you stop by the station to ask Jacob Jarrow, the resident chemist, if he could look at the vial and the leather strap. The small Cajun man looks down at the evidence briefly before telling you he has a lot going on with the major case squad. Probably be a couple of days before he can get to it. You fumble through your pockets and pull out a wadded $10 bill, slapping it down on his desk. His bushy eyebrows peek up at the sight of the crumpled note, and rubbing his stubble, he tells you, "You'll have to double that." You tell him that's extortion. He shrugs and says that's what it takes to get to the front of the line these days. You search your pockets once more, but only a few coins jangle around near your keys. You beg him that if he starts on it now, you'll have the money by lunch. He says he'll have to charge you interest, another $5. You feel your face redden as frustration builds up inside of you. You're about to tell him off, but he holds up his hands and says he's just joking. About the interest. You roll your eyes and head out to the landmark in a huff. As you walk into the hotel, you see McKenna. He sits in a lobby chair, though slumps may be the better term for his posture. Several empty coffee cups lay on the table before him. You call out to him, and startled, he springs to his feet. He rubs his eyes and straightens his coat while trying to suppress a yawn. You ask him about the manager. Still hasn't shown up. And the suspect? Nobody fitting his description has come in or out all night or morning. You thank him and tell him to head back to the station and clock out, but he asks if he could stick around and help. You tell him he needs to get some rest. Don't worry, you'll call on him again in the near future if you need him. You ask him for one more favor. When he gets back to the station, have them send an officer to Calder's residence and tell him to get back to the hotel immediately. The benign request seems to perk up McKenna, and he heads for the door. Mr. Rowland is no longer at the clerk's desk. The new clerk is Mr. Dellum. He's much more pleasant than Rowland and is happy to help with any request you have. You tell him to let you in the manager's office. Entering, you notice that the papers that were out on the desk last night are no longer there. There is a notepad, and you think to shade the top paper with a pencil to see what was written there, but you can tell it's new. There's nothing here except the safe, and you'll have to wait for the manager to look inside it. You ask Dellum to confirm the description of David's made by Florence and the maid. He does, though he adds that he remembered a specific mark on the back of his neck. It was red and oddly shaped. No, not a birthmark. It looked like some kind of chemical burn. He'd seen it on several soldiers when he served in the war. You ask him about the logbook, and he tells you it would be highly irregular for an employee not to log an activity. Mr. Calder keeps a tight rein on everything around here, and he would want to know about every purchase or request by a guest. Mr. Rowland should have known better since he is a senior employee here. You ask when Davids had come to the hotel. About 5 days ago. Had he seen any other guests? Not that Dellum could remember. Was that strange? It was. Physicians pay fees to stay in the staff quarters. Normally they come and stay the night before their client arrives. Davids was just content to wait around, though. Had an air about him, too. Real nonchalant, cocky even. Going into the kitchen and getting his food from the hotel icebox instead of ordering it like everyone else. Flirting with the maids in the public areas. Playing poker with the other guests. Dellum didn't take him for a serious physician. More of a showboat. Which of the maids had he flirted with? Sana. For sure, it was Sana. Why's that? In David's words, it was her long legs and blonde hair. Wouldn't shut up about it. She's here today cleaning the new room for Mrs. Florence and Miss Lily. You thank Dellum, and head that way. Sana is just finishing up making the bed as you enter the room. She turns to you and is at first shaken that you aren't either of the riders. You introduce yourself and she calms, though she affirms that she knows why you are here. You want to talk about David's. She won't lie that he had shown her some affection for the first couple of days, and she liked it. Who wouldn't? A doctor doting on a maid, and a foreign one at that. Most of the locals around here don't like foreigners. You ask her where she's from, and she says, the Netherlands. Came here after the war. Not much left for her back in the old country. You turn the conversation back to David's, and she says he was a nice enough individual. More forward than the other men around here, but she didn't mind. The way he talked wasn't anything unlike what she heard from soldiers. Did he touch her at all? Only a playful grab around the waist a couple of times. Though she remembers he caressed the back of her neck while they talked in the kitchen once. Rough hands, like sandpaper. That all stopped when Miss Lily arrived, though. Once she got here, the two were obsessed with each other. What does she mean? Didn't Davids and Lily only have the one meeting in the ballroom with Miss Florence before the incident? That's not what Sana witnessed. When the ladies first arrived a couple of days ago, Mrs. Florence went straight to the room for a nap. Lily had gone with her, but emerged maybe 10 minutes later. Sana saw her sneak out onto the back lawn and meet up with Davids. The two embraced and went off to the servants' quarters for about an hour. Another maid, Marlene, had seen something similar that same night. Davids and Lily sneaking into a vacant room while Miss Florence had gone to bed. Sana's not naive, and was just glad that she hadn't given in to some of David's suggestions before Lily arrived. And now that the rumor of what happened last night is making the rounds, she doesn't want to think what could have happened to her. You ask if she noticed anything else about David's. He wore a ring right up until Lily and Florence arrived. White gold, shaped like a snake with an emerald stone, on his right ring finger. You mention Mrs. Florence's comment about his accent being from somewhere else. Sana tells you that she's noticed the same thing. Unfortunately, she didn't recognize its origin. As Sana goes into the bathroom to clean, you take a moment to look around the window where Miss Lily was sitting. The desk's surface is empty. No notepad, no pen, no envelopes. You call to Sana and ask if they had stationery in the rooms. She tells you they do, and there was some on the desk when she entered. Was anyone over by the window when she came in? Miss Lily. Did she see Miss Florence anywhere near the window? No. When Sana came in earlier, Mrs. Florence emerged from the bathroom, looked around in one of the dresser drawers for something, a brooch. Couldn't find the one she wanted, so she grabbed another. Then she went and got Miss Lily, and they left. And she's sure the notepad was here when she entered. Very sure. Miss Lily was writing on it. Upon returning to the lobby, you find Miss Florence and Miss Lily have returned from their walk. Lily's eyes still look glazed over and dull. How does she pull it off, you think? Mrs. Florence questions you about the case. You tell her that you are following up on some leads and are hoping to have more information soon. She doesn't seem too pleased, but thanks you anyway, and the two turn to leave.
You compliment Miss Florence on her brooch and ask if the pendant had shown up. Unfortunately, no. You ask if she's lost any other jewelry recently. She informs you that about a month ago she had a ring go missing. It was white gold in the shape of a snake with an emerald set in the head. It had been her husband's. You look in Miss Lily's direction for a reaction, but her face is turned from you. You wish them well, and the two walk back to their room. Dellum calls you over and informs you of a message from the station. Calder has been located at his residence. He's on his way presently to the hotel to meet you. Should be here within the hour. You thank the clerk and ask him if he had noticed David's accent. He had. Carolina. How can he be sure? He has a cousin from that region. You ask Dellum how long he's worked here. Only a few months. In fact, most of the staff are relatively new. Only Mr. Calder and Mr. Rowland have been here long term. At 9 a.m., Calder speedily comes into the hotel, wiping his brow with a handkerchief. He's apologetic as he comes up to you and places his hand on yours. His palm is sweaty and warm, and you have to wipe off your hand on your jacket after he lets go. He makes excuses for himself on behalf of his wife, droning on about her condition. You interrupt him and tell him to just let you see the file on David's and the information on the doctor. He takes you into his office and opens up the safe. You notice a neatly stacked pile of folders and a couple of camera reels, one in a green case and the other yellow. You ask what are those for. Family keepsakes, he says as he closes the safe and hands you the file. Looking through it, nothing seems to be out of the ordinary. David's is a physician from South Carolina, hence the accent. Studied at MUSC in Charleston and specializes in alternative methods of healing hysteria and mental fatigue. You tell him you'll need to take it for further review. Also, why are so many of the staff new here? People move on, he says, still sweating profusely. The hotel business isn't a long-term career. You note he must be grateful for the constance of Mr. Rowland, but he doesn't respond, guiding you to the door. You remind him about the doctor's information, and his face starts to purple with anxiety. He confesses that he has lost it, but he'll check with the waitstaff tonight before dinner. It's all been such an ordeal between the riders, the investigation, and keeping Mr. Banyan apprised. On top of that, his poor wife just can't stay well. Then there's this budget issue. You hold up a hand to stop him from continuing. You just want the doctor's information as soon as possible. His face returns to its normal color, and he opens the door for you, giving you a pat on the back as you exit. You can feel the sweat of his palm through your coat. He doesn't follow you. As soon as you're back in the lobby, he shuts the door and locks it. Strange man. Over by the clerk's desk, you can hear an argument between Mr. Dellum and another man. At first you move to approach, but keep your distance when he brings up the crime scene room. He's a short, stocky fellow with a duffel bag by his feet. He demands to be let in the room immediately. He is a special cleaner hired by the hotel. His name has to be on the schedule. Fielding Bro. Mr. Dellum insists that he cannot go in the room as it has not been released by the authorities. The man throws his hands up and reiterates he has to do his job. Mr. Rowland is much more accommodating, and when Bro goes to Calder, he'll tell him about Mr. Dellum's unhelpfulness. He storms off in the direction of Calder's office, and you step up quickly to talk to Dellum. You ask him for the keys to the room. He hands them over, and you tell him to call the room if the manager and that Bro fellow start walking that way. You run to the room and begin to look around frantically. Opening drawers and pulling up the sheets and pillows, you feel like a robber turning the place over. What are you missing? What has Calder hired Bro to do? The place was immaculate before you entered, save for the few dust marks McKenna left from gathering prints. Bro doesn't have the look of a cleaner either. Nothing in the drawers, under the bed, beneath the mattress. Nothing. You put your hands on your hips in frustration and feel the sweatiness of your own palms now. As you stand there, nervous for the time and for some kind of breakthrough, you look towards the bookshelf on the wall. You hadn't examined it last night, and it doesn't look like McKenna had either. It's similar to the one in Calder's office, but is filled with books and ornamental items. It has the look of being more decorative than utilitarian, you think, as though it isn't to be disturbed. You look quickly to see if something on the shelf looks strange or out of place. One item that catches your eye: a Mardi Gras mask. Not for its look, but for how it's positioned on the shelf. It's not sitting there, it's connected to the wall, almost like it's screwed into it. You examine it closely and notice something strange to the left of it. It looks like a hinge that's been painted the same dark brown color as the bookshelf. You pull on the side of the mask and a hidden door pops open, big enough for a face to hide behind. Behind it, you find a hidden camera, the lens positioned to peer out from the eye hole of the mask. So someone is secretly filming this room. That means they had the whole incident on the camera. At first you think to try and remove it, but the phone starts ringing. You reposition the mask and try to tidy up the room as much as possible before leaving. As you exit into the hallway, you nearly collide with Bro. Both he and Mr. Calder are surprised to see you. You tell Calder that you were finishing up your investigation and found nothing new in the room. You understand he may need it for future guests and return the keys to him. Both men look at you cautiously, but nothing more is said. You exit the hotel, thanking Dellum for his help as you leave and hunker down in your car. Bro won't be long, you think. You chide yourself at first. Why not just expose the hidden camera to the two men when they walked in? Surely Calder would have cracked under at least some pressure. But it's too risky. They could both deny knowledge of the camera. Anyone could have placed it there. Former employee, former guest. Plus, arresting them doesn't get you closer to David's. Though should you even be pursuing him anymore? Based on the statement from Sana, Lily's mental haze sounds like an act. Something's up, though. The camera and the violence of the incident don't add up to Sana's recollection of David's. She said he was gentle and playful. What caused last night to go so wrong? And why is Lily still pretending if David's has just run off? You'll need to see this one through for a bit longer. Less than an hour later, the stumpy man exits the hotel, duffel bag tucked under his arm. He gets in a blue sedan, license number LMP891. You try to follow him at a distance, but he takes several sharp turns and you worry that he may have figured out he's being followed. Bro makes a stop at a diner and hurries inside. He looks over his shoulder in your direction and there's no doubt your cover is blown. You radio into the station and ask for an officer. Waylon Daniels' voice comes over the radio and asks what he can do to help. Come to 18th and Wesson, the Little Jug Diner, plain clothes in an unmarked car. Does he want another detective instead? Daniels asks. No, you'll do. You give him the description of Bro's vehicle and wait. It takes about 30 minutes, but when you see Daniels approaching in his own vehicle, you pull off slowly. As you make the turn around the corner, Daniels radios and says the man fitting Bro's description has exited the diner and is walking to the corner. You keep driving and can see in your rearview mirror a shadowy figure peering from the edge of the building for a moment before ducking back quickly out of sight. A few minutes later, Daniels radios that the man has gotten into his car. You tell him to follow, but not close. Just keep tabs on him until he gets to his destination. You look at your watch. Noon. Already? You head back to the station, hoping Jacob has some good news for you. But what about that $10? Jacob waits for you to present the money before sharing his findings. You hold out your hands and say you're sorry, you just couldn't find it. He shakes his head and says, you're buying my rounds at Reggie's next time. The residue in the vial is liquid metal, iron, he believes. The circular disc in the leather strap, he says, holding up the now removed circular disc to a filing cabinet and letting go. It clings to it. It's a magnet, and seems to be of high intensity. Has markings on it that indicate that it's stolen from the military. So how does it and the liquid metal work, you ask? Assuming she drank it, there's a chance the magnet and iron interacting could have caused some kind of reaction in the body or the mind for a short time. So it's not drugs. That's good. Would hate to have this case kicked over to narcotics. You ask if a strong enough dose could cause an adverse reaction, something like a seizure? Possibly, though he doesn't know of any reactions like that in his studies. Most of the science on this kind of thing is dubious from what Jarrow can remember. It would explain the lack of a struggle in the room if she were incapacitated, but why the smell of ether? You spend the next hour looking further through David's file and the other evidence. Something is strange. All of the logs have Mr. Rowland signing him in and out of his stays. Wouldn't that have been something Calder would do? More suspiciously, David's doesn't pay the hotel. The hotel pays him in cash every time and the amount is unlisted. Why not write a check? Why not write the amount down, especially in a budget crisis? You call Daniels on the radio. He is headed back to the station. He tracked Bro into an old office building in the next town of Cavender. He doesn't think Bro noticed him, though. You ask if he is available tonight, but he says he is supposed to be off and his wife just had a baby. He can't really work nights right now. You thank him and wish him luck. Before you leave, you call the university in South Carolina and ask after David's records. The lady on the phone tells you she'll look into it and call you first thing in the morning. You go to the front desk to ask the station manager, Officer Clare, to put in a request for McKenna to go with you on a stakeout tonight. You decide to clock off early since you'll be doing another night shift. Maybe the lack of noisy neighbors will help you get some rest at home. Around 9 p.m., McKenna meets you at the station and the two of you talk over the case notes as you drive out to the office building, though you withhold the knowledge about the camera for now. McKenna recalls having a brief encounter with the two ladies as they left the hotel that morning. Lily seemed out of sorts from the ordeal the previous night, but had enough of her faculties to hand a letter to the postman as he arrived. He also noted that Mr. Rowland looked very nervous the whole time he was there. Didn't want to engage in conversation while McKenna was around, but the clerk constantly watched him the whole night. Rowland even missed a couple of room calls. As the two of you arrive at Bro's office building, you park a couple of blocks down behind a delivery truck. Bro's car is still outside, though it's hard to see if the office is lit. The windows must be tinted because the only light coming from the building are a few small beams of red shooting out of one of the windows. You tell McKenna that as soon as Bro leaves, the two of you will see if there's a way to discreetly enter the premises. Of course, anything found there won't be able to be used as evidence for now. You don't have a warrant to enter the building, just to surveil it. If there is something there, they can try to walk things back and ask for forgiveness later. McKenna hesitates at this tactic at first, but offers that he has experience picking locks. You don't ask him how he got this talent. A lot of Gulf Breeze's cops come from rough backgrounds. Around midnight, a person resembling Bro exits the building and gets in his car. The vehicle eases off and makes a turn back in the direction of Gulf Breeze. You wait a minute and tell McKenna to get out and take a walk up to the building to see if he can determine whether or not the property is empty. You watch him disappear behind the building as a car passes. It drives by without slowing. Your nerves are bubbling and you think to take a drink from your flask, but hold off. You need a sharp mind tonight. About 10 minutes later, McKenna signals to you all is clear. You give in to temptation and take a swig. As you get to the building, McKenna is already working on the lock. Once he gets it picked, he lets out an excited yes, and you have to remind him to keep quiet. You listen to the silence before turning the knob. Nothing. Why does that make you more nervous? You head in, and the building has a hideous odor, and it hits the back of your throat. The stench is about as strong as the ether smell in the hotel room, but not the same flavor. You feel for a light switch, but you can't find anything on the wall. McKenna turns on his flashlight to look around, and the two of you see trays with standing liquid in them, bottles full of chemicals, clotheslines strung across the room, and bits of loose film laying out on the table. A film studio. So Bro was there to get the reel from the camera. You see a light bulb dangling from a wire in the middle of the room with a pull line. As soon as you grab it, the room fills with a bright red light. It makes you feel almost as nauseous as the smell. You feel your stomach turn over and the whiskey preparing to rocket back up your esophagus. You close your eyes to steady things, but when you open them, you notice something behind McKenna. No, someone. You yell out to your partner to watch out, but not before the shadowy figure brings down a heavy object on McKenna's head and sprints for the door. You feel the adrenaline rushing hot through your veins, and you make for the door to block the dark figure's exit. He gets there first, but you lunge out and grasp for an ankle, tripping him up. You pull yourself up and try to wrestle control of one of his arms. The two of you roll around on the sidewalk, clawing at each other under the moonless sky. In the melee, you notice the figure trying to reach for something in his pocket. His back is turned to you, and you pull on his shirt collar, and despite the dim light of the night sky, you can see the mark Della mentioned earlier. It's David's! You've got his right arm behind his back and are reaching for your set of handcuffs and your coat, but by then David's has found what he was looking for in his own pocket. You hear a metallic click from a switchblade, and then with a sudden wild thrust he swings his left arm back and slashes your left arm. You reach for the wound, giving David's enough freedom to turn and thrust the sole of his foot into your chest. You tumble backwards and David's leaps to his feet and runs off frantically. The wind is knocked out of you and you can't bring yourself to stand and chase after him. McKenna stumbles out of the door, rubbing his head, and sees you lying on the ground. He checks on you to make sure you're okay. The wound on your arm is bleeding, but not deep. The shock of the strike startled you more than the actual cut. You'll be all right. How about McKenna? He feels a lump forming and he's a bit woozy, but luckily he's not bleeding. He advises that both of you need to get going in case the local cops show up and start asking questions. Ignoring his concern, you push past him and head back into the building. You find the switch to the regular lights and look around for something, anything they could use to make this awful night worth it. A longer spool of film lays on one of the tables. Hopefully, it's already been developed and Bro just forgot to dispose of it. The both of you make it back to the car and take off. McKenna drives and makes a joke that he thought you detectives did all the boring stuff. You just look at the film and contemplate what to do next. Back at the station, McKenna stitches up your arm. He asks if they should report the David sighting. You tell him, not now. There would be too many questions and they'd probably get in trouble for going beyond their surveillance warrant without any real proof. They barely had good enough reason to be there officially. McKenna pushes back that the chief will understand, but you shut him down. He won't. You've already had this happen before. It's why you work these kind of cases. Used to, you were a part of the major case squad. About 3 years ago, there was a case where the team was pointed to a prime suspect, a husband accused of killing his wife. Everyone said it was him getting revenge on her for having an affair. There was plenty of evidence, including from a PI the husband had hired. Photos of the wife and her lover going to the Lighthouse Inn in Cavender. Something didn't sit right with you, though. The husband was doing shift work the night of the murder. There was only a 30-minute window where he wasn't accounted for at first, and that was too little time to get home and kill her the way it happened. She was butchered, cut up and tossed in a dumpster a couple of blocks from their house. The lead detective told you that the husband probably had a coworker lie for him. He was well liked on the job, and they'd all probably understand if he did it. Once the police started turning up the pressure, though, the co-workers started to stretch the time to fit the narrative. But you wouldn't let it go. You followed the man with whom the wife had the affair, just like today with Bro. You broke into his house, though not as elegantly as McKenna had done at Bro's office. Used a crowbar to pry the back door open. Went in and found a letter from the wife. She had sent it a few days before the murder. Wanted to end the affair, tired of his mind games. Didn't want him coming around her house like the other night again. It was at least a reason to look into the guy. You didn't find any other evidence there, but in following him, you noticed that he owned a lockup a few blocks from his home. The murder weapon hadn't been found. You thought it probably was there. Too bad the guy had spotted you following him. He reported to the station and you got called into the chief's office. You showed him the letter and gave your theory. The chief didn't pat you on the back or tell you good job, though. He jumped down your throat for going off on your own. The station was going to get sued for your cowboy antics. The chief promised to clean up your mess, but that would be your last case on the MCS. You've been handling sexual violence and perversion cases ever since. McKenna asked you what happened with the case. The husband was arrested and convicted. The wife's lover took his lawsuit money and moved elsewhere. Heard he got trying to strangle a woman about a year ago. At least somebody got him in the end. McKenna understands your hesitancy, but the two of you are really close to breaking this case. Why not head to the hotel and see if Bro is there? You tell him to relax. They've done all they need to do tonight, and the day staff at the hotel are much more helpful anyhow. Can you at least check the film to see what's on it, he asks. And why did you even need to confiscate it? You take a deep breath and confess what you knew about the camera being in the room. McKenna's eyes squint at you with confusion. Why didn't you tell him that already? You make excuses that past detectives have undermined you and you really just don't know who to trust around here anymore. McKenna shakes his head in frustrating disappointment. He stuck his neck out for you tonight, and this is how you repay him, withholding information. If you want his help anymore, you're going to have to be straight with him. You decide to also tell him about the conversation you had with Sana. So we're not even dealing with a rape case, he says. So why are we doing all of this? Because something is wrong, you said. Why are they filming people in the hotel? Why did they try to strangle her with that strap? What's going on with the metal and the magnet? Something is just not right here. There's something bigger, and they have to get to the bottom of it. McKenna relents and says, well, let's take a look at what's on the film then. The problem is, you don't really know if the film's developed or not. You need to wait for Jaro to come in and confirm that fact. Hopefully it is, and you can have a look at it. McKenna's eyes roll and he lets out a deep sigh. What are they supposed to do now? Just go home and get some rest, you say. You'll make a fresh start tomorrow at 8 a.m. sharp. He grabs his keys off the desk and starts for the door. You call out to him and tell him to trust you. There's something here with this case. Something big. He turns slightly to acknowledge the thought before promising to see you in the morning. Pulling up to your apartment building, you can already see the damage to your door. It's broken off the hinges. Walking into the hovel, everything has been turned over or smashed. Damage both from looking and the frustration of not finding what they want, you think. You want to call this in, but that would be just another dagger in this investigation. You have to find a way to get this case back on track. You go to your room and grab an extra set of clothes and head back to the station. Jaro's office is always quiet, but first a detour to the landmark. You park along the highway and hike up the forested path. Mosquitoes surround you and you're constantly slapping at your neck to keep them away. Once you get close to the hotel, you creep up to one of the windows and hide in a bush. From a distance, you see Mr. Rowland and Bro talking at the clerk's desk. You don't need to read lips to see that it's a heated conversation. Rowland is doing everything he can to calm down Mr. Bro before the latter shoves a duffel bag into the former's chest and storms out, climbs into his sedan, revs the engine loudly, and peels out. When he's out of sight, you look back into the hotel and notice Mr. Rowland bringing the duffel bag into the manager's office. That's the evidence, the break in the case. Tomorrow morning, it'll be all yours. and you'll be back on the Major Case Squad. You're awakened by the sound of a key sliding into Jaro's door lock. Jacob is there early and looks startled to see you. After telling him what went on the night before, Jaro shakes his head and says a few words in French that you've heard him say before when he's angry. He gives you the big speech about how this is what got you where you are in the first place. You hold up your hands and ask him for a favor. You have a roll of film that you want him to examine. He takes it and says that it's a little scuffed, but looks like it's been developed already. Should be fine to view. The film length isn't very long, about 10 to 15 seconds. The scene is mostly just Lily and Mrs. Florence in the original room. Florence is standing before the bed. Lily is seated on the edge of it. Florence's hands are in an elevated position. They come down to her sides rapidly. Lily's face appears blank and emotionless. Florence turns away from Lily, and you can see Florence's face for a split second. Her eyes are narrowed, face contorted into a scowl, shoulders rigid. She walks towards the door, and you see Lily's head drop a bit, her face obscured by her hair. Florence turns quickly after opening the door. Looks like she says something and then exits, closing the door with some force behind her. The slam of the door causes Lily to flinch. That's most of it, but at the very end you see something. Lily's face. It seems to brighten. The beginning of a smile, and then the film reel ends. So there's definitely a working hidden camera in the room. Florence's actions indicate a frustration with Lily. What was that frustration? Lily's countenance changes immediately after Florence leaves the room. That confirms what Sana had seen. Lily is acting, and really well. Jacob says something again in French before saying he won't be taking any of his lady friends there anytime soon. So what are you going to do? Probably could get the hotel in trouble for indecency and voyeurism. Nothing major, but the chief will be happy to see your beat actually get a win. You look at Jaro and tell him there's more here. You start to plead your case like with McKenna the night before, but Jaro doesn't want to hear it. He reminds you about the case 3 years ago and how much trouble that caused. You can't go rogue like that again. Not if you want to keep your job. Just play nice and get your... Jaro stops mid-sentence. His eyes locked on yours. He can tell what you're feeling. You've never been good at hiding emotion with your eyes. Right now, they're looking at him with the same contempt you had for Calder yesterday morning. Jaro looks down and mutters something else in French. You get up and tell him you're going to find the full story. It's not going to be like 3 years ago, and it's your tale if things go upside down again. Jaro says he's just looking out for his friend. You give him a glance and see that he really means it, but you're resolute. You're going to find the rest of this reel and bring these guys down. He nods and reminds you that you owe him that drink at Reggie's, his lip curling up into a smile. As you're heading to the front door, Officer Claire calls out to you and says that there's a message from the university in South Carolina. You read her notes and your eyes widen with surprise. David's died 5 years ago, the day of his graduation. Drowned. Moreover, his description didn't match that from Mrs. Florence. He was a Dutch man, blond hair, fair skin, green eyes, and not very tall. You look around for McKenna, but he's not there. You decide to head out and tell Claire that when McKenna checks in to have him meet you at the hotel. As you get to your car, though, you're intercepted by Mrs. Florence. She is frantic and barely making any sense. You usher her back into the station and tell Claire to get her some water and meet in Jaro's office. Jacob hears your voice and begins to say he's glad you've come to your senses, but his tone shifts when he sees Florence with you. He clears some of the files off a chair and helps her to get seated. What's all this, he asks, but you can't tell him. She hasn't made any sense so far. You remind Florence to take a deep breath and try to calm down. You're here to help, but you need her to tell you exactly what's happened. It's Lily, she blurts out before going back into a sob and pressing her face into her gloved hands. Jacob and you share worried glances. What about Lily, you ask? She heaves a couple of times before getting out the word gone. Lily's gone. What does she mean, gone? She's not there. Someone must have taken her in the night. Why didn't she call from the hotel? The desk clerk, Roland, he wouldn't help her. Said Lily probably went for a walk and he was heading home. She pleaded with him, but he just threw her off and stormed out the door. Surely Dellum was there to relieve him, you say, but she says he doesn't show up until right about now. Roland left early then, you think. You ask if it's possible Lily could have gone for an early morning walk, as Roland said. She says absolutely not. Lily was in no state to do so on her own, and besides, several pieces of her jewelry, including her favorite brooch, the ruby one she wore yesterday, have gone missing along with $1,000. Clearly, this Davids man had come back while the two were sleeping, kidnapped Lily, and robbed Florence blind. You ask her if she and Lily had any arguments the day of the rape. Jaro gives you a chastising look, but you press her on the question. She looks confused by it at first, as though she's searching for the answer and the reason you asking it. Her eyes light up a bit, and she confesses that she did vent about the missing pendant. Lily didn't respond, just sat there, which made Florence all the more frustrated. At that, Florence starts sobbing again. Jaro says he thinks that's enough. You promise Florence you'll get to the bottom of this case and ask Jacob if she could stay in his office. He gives you a judging look but agrees, but follows you as you leave. What are you going to do, he asks. You tell him you're going to solve this case and nail those bastards for what they've done to that woman in there. If that includes Lily, then so be it. You turn and nearly run into McKenna, who has just shown up. He apologizes for his tardiness. He had a flat tire overnight. 4, actually. Had to catch the bus. Jaro shakes his head and says something in French again before calling out to Claire for more water. You see Daniels as you are heading out and decide to bring him along as well. He can help by gathering Florence's things and maybe be a distraction while McKenna and you try to find some evidence. Before you leave, you ask Claire if they have any blank film reels lying around the station. She tells you they keep some in the storage room just down the hall. As Daniels drives you and McKenna towards the landmark, you look back from the front seat and tell him that your house was broken into last night. Same people probably did his tires in. McKenna shrugs and says he guesses he was wrong about detective work being boring. A bit annoying, though. You go over the plan for how you want to handle things at the landmark. Daniels will get Calder to help him with gathering Florence's remaining things. The pretense is that she is threatening to sue, and anything the hotel can do to help her might prevent said suit from happening. That'll get him jumping. Meanwhile, McKenna and you will sneak in through the side entrance and ask Dellum for the keys to the office. McKenna can pick the safe, and you'll replace the reel that Bro helpfully delivered last night with the blank one you have right now. McKenna asks you how you know Bro dropped off the reel. You confess going to the landmark last night, which gets McKenna more miffed, and he starts complaining that that was his idea before saying this whole thing is a waste of time. Just a couple of perverts filming women in their underwear. You just want it to be something that it's not so you can get back to the big leagues. You start to glare at him, but take a deep breath before promising them both that a case like this can do wonders for their career. If it's a pornography ring, that's not just local news, it's national. They just need to trust you. The car is silent for a moment before Daniels breaks in asking where to drop you two of you off. Right by the highway. McKenna and you will hoof it the quarter-mile to the hotel through the woods. Daniels does as you say, and McKenna and you start the trek to the landmark. You try to apologize for your methods and begin explaining, but McKenna says he just wants to see this case through and get that promotion you keep dangling in front of him. If it blows up, you need to take the fall alone, though. Daniels has a family, and McKenna isn't going back to the streets. As the two of you exit the forest, you creep up to the side of the building and enter through a side door. Hiding in a hallway, you have a clear vision of the manager's office and the front desk. Daniels is talking with Calder still, and the manager seems to be complaining. He gives up when Daniels explains Mrs. Florence has promised to drop any legal complaints if she and her daughter can get their things and leave. You notice Calder's reaction at Daniels mentioning both women leaving. He knows she's gone missing, you tell McKenna without looking at him. You can feel his reaction like a mother with a pouting child, silent indignation with a side of eye roll. As soon as Daniels and the manager ascend the stairs, the two of you hurry over to Dellum's desk. He greets you with a smile, though he looks shocked to see you. Did you know one of your officers is here? You ignore the question and tell him to let you into Calder's office now. His look becomes more bewildered, but he agrees when he sees the determined look in your eyes. You thank him and tell him to let you know when the manager returns downstairs. No, he doesn't have to bring Calder to you. You're sure he's busy. Just come knock when he comes back down. As the door closes, you tell McKenna to get to work on the safe. He protests at first, saying it's more tainted evidence. A halfway decent lawyer will get it thrown out at trial. You turn on him and let out your frustration with a huffing growl. There's no time for parsing the rights and wrongs of this right now. A woman is missing, and even if she ran off with David's, the man's dangerous. Now crack that safe, or you'll be doing some investigation into how he has this knowledge. McKenna holds your stare for a while, but relents and starts to examine the safe. He notes that it's a newer model, but not complicated. The older ones tend to be more difficult. It takes about 5 minutes of McKenna working the dial, but it feels like hours to you. Every little sound outside of the room causes your stomach to turn over. Finally, the sound of a metal click. McKenna turns the handle and the safe door pops open. Looking inside, you only see the one reel this time, sitting beside those same neatly stacked papers. There's a note card attached to the reel, for PB. You take the reel out and replace it with the blank one from the station, and decide to look through the files as well. Mr. Rowland's file catches your eye. The basic information is straightforward, but his place of birth stands out. Charleston, South Carolina. Same city as the university. Could he have a connection with David's? The file on David said he had come here 5 times in the last 3 years. Rowland started working here 4 years ago, and the real David's died 5 years ago. You note his address in Cavender and tell McKenna you'll both be heading there next. As you prepare to exit the office, McKenna calls your attention to something. From his position kneeling on the floor, he could just catch sight of it. 10 buttons on the underside of the desk, each with a wire attached and neatly running down the side of the desk and under the carpet. They have labels with 3-digit numbers on them. Room numbers. Exiting the office, you can hear Calder's voice and see he and Daniels hefting luggage as they descend the stairs. The two of you duck out of sight and watch as Calder and Daniels exit the lobby and walk to the car. Dellum is rounding the corner just as you step back out from hiding. You thank him for being so helpful and ask for another favor. Tell the manager that his wife has just called and fallen ill again when he comes back in. He's needed home urgently. Also, tell Daniels to wait here when he returns. You can see the unease on Dellum's face, now beading with sweat. You place your hand on his shoulder and tell him to trust you. You'll be helping Miss Lily and Mrs. Florence if you do this. He agrees with a big, gasping breath. You ask if the hotel has a reel-to-reel projector. He shakily points in the direction of a small conference room across the lobby. Upon reaching the room, you tell McKenna to set up the projector while you keep a lookout to ensure that Calder takes the bait and heads home. Why not arrest Calder now? McKenna asks. You still need to see what's on the reel, and keeping him busy will give you time. When Dellum tells Calder, he seems annoyed at first, but then rushes back out to the parking lot. You step out from the conference room to watch him get into his car and drive off towards his home. That'll give you at least 30 minutes. You return to the room where McKenna already has everything set up, and the film begins to roll.
David's. For the first time, you can see him clearly, the lanky physique matching the shadowy, violent figure from the night before. Lily isn't in a haze as he enters the room. Her face is beaming, and she embraces him as he shuts the door. The two kiss, and she lifts her skirt and pulls something out of her garter around her leg. It looks like a pendant. She hands it to David's, and the two embrace again. It doesn't take long before the two are wrapped together in the bed. After they finish, McKenna throws in that he hasn't seen any rape. It's illegal pornography for sure, and evidence of grand theft, but not rape. Kind of a bust if you ask him. As the film continues, you notice something. While Lily and Davids are cleaning up and getting dressed, a man appears at the window. It's Roland. David seems to notice him and positions Lily to where her back is away from the window. The two begin kissing again as Roland eases up the window and quietly enters the room, the footprint making its mark on the sill. You see a cloth in Roland's hand, and he presses it against Lily's mouth as he grabs hold of her, trapping her right arm against her body. At first, Lily resists, flailing her free arm in an attempt to grab at Roland's hair. You can see her eyes looking frantically at David's for help, but he just stands there. A few seconds pass, and she starts to go limp. Roland lays her on the bed in a way so she's positioned to be seen by the camera. He and Davids tie the unconscious woman to the bed, and Roland goes back to the window to grab a bag. As he sets it down, the two men are startled by something. This must be where Mrs. Florence returned. The two men stay silent for a moment, but Lily begins to stir in the bed. Roland grabs David's leather strap and ties it tight around her neck. You can see the frustration and anger on his face, but as she locks eyes with his, Roland backs away. She starts struggling to breathe and jerks in the bed. David darts out the window first in a leap, and Roland isn't far behind him, grabbing the bag on the way out. A few seconds later, Calder enters with Mrs. Florence. She immediately becomes hysterical with wild motions, and Calder looks in the direction of the window first, and then the camera. Disappointment on his face, and the film reel wraps up. You both sit there trying to figure out what you've just seen. You feel a knot in your stomach and your head throbs as the anger rushes through your body. McKenna seems surprisingly calm, but on second look you see a clenched jaw and focused eyes, green and bright with rage. You were right is all he can say. You look at your watch. It's been just under 30 minutes. You head out of the conference room and back to Dellum's desk. Daniels is there too. You can see Dellum's shirt is wet with sweat now, and his hair is soaked at the roots. His eyes are red from crying. Daniels tells you that Mr. Calder has just phoned. He knows Dellum lied. He's been fired. You reach over and place a hand on Dellum's shoulder. You promise him you'll do everything in your power to take care of him when everything is over. You use the phone to call the station and request a warrant for Calder's arrest. When questioned, you tell them kidnapping and conspiracy to commit murder. You have all the evidence they'll need, and he's a flight risk. He needs to be picked up now. He'll be here in a few minutes, but you and your team need to head out to collect one of the other conspirators. After some hesitancy from the other end, you raise your voice and say, "Just get it done," and slam the phone down. You notice that Dellum has now turned a deathly pale. You tell him to sit tight, and if the officer isn't here when Calder arrives, detain him, distract him, whatever it takes so that he doesn't leave. The three of you race out into the parking lot and hop into the car. While Daniels drives, McKenna complains about the whole film reel thing. How can you use it as evidence when you weren't supposed to have access to it in the first place? You tell him not to worry. The shoe print of Roland's places him at the scene along with his woolen fibers. He must have disposed of the jacket somewhere and changed out with a spare. His fingerprints will have been on the strap and window frame as well. When you bring Roland in, hopefully that evidence will be enough to get him to spill. If not, showing him the real will push him over the edge and he'll confess. You'll never have to even mention it to anyone until you clean it up with a search warrant and raid of Calder's office. You catch Daniel's expression as you say all of this, eyes wide and stone-faced. He just stares forward and drives on. And what about Calder? McKenna offers. You tell McKenna the two of you were just doing a routine sweep of his offices after dropping off the files when you found those buttons. That's enough to have him for illegally filming individuals. Indecency. Then why say kidnapping over the phone? You shake your head and take a deep breath. Because they wouldn't have arrested him for the other stuff. Don't you get it, McKenna? Nobody cares about the little minnows. They want the big fish. Take a photo of a woman through her bathroom window. That's a slap on the wrist. Kidnap someone. That's front page news. Daniels drives on silently while McKenna looks out the window in upset confusion. You turn back around and just think how close you are to getting out of this pit. The three of you arrive at a small house on a cul-de-sac. It looks surprisingly in disrepair, not in keeping with Mr. Rowland's straight-laced appearance at work. The bushes under the window are shaggy and crawl halfway up the window panes. The white siding on the house is stained brown in spots, and the lawn doesn't look like it's been cut in a month. You tell Daniels to stay in the car and keep it running. As you walk up the pathway to the front door, you notice the curtains move slightly in one of the windows. You turn to tell McKenna to unclip his holster just in case things get ugly, but he's already ahead of you. You knock on the door, but no response comes. No sound from the inside. McKenna asks if you want him to kick it in. You wave him off and call out to Mr. Rowland to come out. They have a warrant for his arrest. They know he was in the room when Lily was raped, and he helped kidnap her. At first you hear nothing, but then some movement. Footsteps, fast and fading away. He tells McKenna to kick the door, but it doesn't give when he drives his heel into it. You look around for something heavy and see some decent-sized stones lying in the flower beds. You pick one of the larger stones up and hurl it through the living room window. The two of you break some more glass as you begin to make your way into the house. You turn back and yell to Daniels to keep a lookout for Roland on the side. Daniels is fumbling for his gun as you say this, and you yell for him to just keep watch. Leave the cowboying to you. As you climb through the window, McKenna is already making his way back to the front of the house. Roland's gone. He got out the back door and must have hopped the fence. McKenna wants to get after him, but you tell him it's a waste of time. They need to figure out where Lily's been taken. Maybe there's something in the house. Roland's home is more of a mess on the inside than on the out. It reeks of tobacco. Clothes are littered in every surface. Food is left out on tables. There's dirt ground into the carpet, especially towards the back of the house. You enter the guest room and notice it's much cleaner than the other areas of the house. You wonder if this is where David stays. You see a nightstand and open the drawer. The only thing inside are some envelopes with letters addressed to one John Davids. Looking through them quickly, you see multiple return addresses. One from Massachusetts, one from Texas, two from Kentucky, and there's Lily from Missouri. You don't have time to read them now, but stow them away in your coat pocket. In Roland's room, you find his work shoes at the foot of his bed and collect them as well. You get the whiff of a familiar smell. Ether. It's coming from the closet. You open the door, and hanging inside is a maroon woolen coat with the insignia of the Landmark Hotel emblazoned on the left breast pocket. You've got him. As you return to the living room, McKenna tells you he thinks he's found something, holding up a notepad. It's from a different hotel, the Lookout Inn in Cavender.
It's only a couple miles up the road, he says. Might be where David's and Lily are. If we leave now, there might be enough time to beat Roland there. Heading to the lookout, you try to keep an eye out for Roland, but he's nowhere to be found. Maybe this is a fool's errand, but this is the same hotel as that case a few years ago. It has the reputation for these kinds of people. A crack of thunder breaks open the sky and heavy rain starts to pour down. The lookout is nothing compared to the landmark. A shabby two-story motel with the doors to each room accessible for anyone who walks up. There's an office separate from the double-decker row of rooms. It has a faux lighthouse built on top of it, charming lure for young couples and love affairs. Daniels drops you and McKenna off close to the front office doors. You tell him to pull the car out of sight as you jump out and sprint through the torrent into the make-believe lighthouse. There, a man sits behind a desk reading a newspaper and smoking a cigar. He barely acknowledges the bell above the door as the two of you enter the building. You walk up to the desk and ask to see a list of the guests staying here at the inn. He looks up for a moment before shrugging and then returning to his paper. You pull out your badge and shove his newspaper down with it before telling him to get the log now. The dumpy man's eyes widen at the sight of the badge, and he springs into action. Unlocking a small cabinet, he pulls out the log and hands it over. Looking through the log, only 3 of the 20 rooms are currently occupied. One of them, room 105, was just occupied at 11 a.m., with the words hourly rate in parentheses beside the name, Smith. The other 2 are right next to each other, 208 and 207, second floor, one having been rented the previous night and the other the night before. You tell him to hand over the keys to both those rooms. He fishes around in the desk for them and tells you that he knew those 2 were trouble. First, the lanky fellow coming in a couple nights ago, stressed out. Then the shorter one last night, stunk something fierce. You ask if there's been any women in the rooms. He says he can't say yes or no, though the lanky guy had someone with him in a trench coat late yesterday evening. Couldn't make out who they were as the lighting around here isn't the best, though. The 2 of you get ready to make your way to the hotel rooms when you see Roland running in a full sprint through the rain. Soaked and barefoot, he stumbles his way onto the premises. McKenna doesn't wait for any order, storming out into the weather and tackling Roland to the ground. The 2 wrestle briefly, but Roland has exhausted himself on his sprint, and McKenna easily subdues the man, dragging him back to the office. You go outside and signal Daniels to drive back around to the front. You place Roland in handcuffs and throw him head first into the back seat of the car. You tell Daniels to wait here while you and McKenna go arrest Davids and Bro. You just hope for Florence's sake her granddaughter is still alive. Heading up the outside stairs, rain soaking your coat. Your pulse pounds forcefully in your neck. McKenna is behind you, gun drawn and ready to pounce. Now at the top of the stairs, room 208 is just 2 doors down. You go softly, and the 2 of you take positions on either side of the door. You're closest to the doorknob. Slipping the spare key into the lock as quietly as you can, you gently turn it over. As the lock clicks, you hear a sudden movement. Then, the sound of a metallic pumping action. You yell at McKenna to get down! The next sensation you feel is a loud ringing in your right ear. A massive amount of pressure pushes into the side of your face and shoulder. The pressure turns to pinpricks and then suddenly burns like droplets of acid against your skin. You feel your body jerk and fling into the balcony rail. The scent of smoke fills your nostrils and you feel bits of debris falling around you as you huddle against the railing. You try to look around, but everything is blurry at first. Trying to focus, you see the outline of McKenna lying on the ground, not moving. Pieces of debris on top of him, but you can't tell if there's blood anywhere around him. You're positioned just so that you can see into the room, a large hole now giving you a clear view of Bro, his beady eyes peering out at you.
Just barely over the ringing in your ear, you hear another metallic pump. He levels the gun in your direction, and you wonder if this will be the end. You muster what little energy you have left to roll your way out of the line of sight. Another blast from the shotgun fires just as you do, and you can feel the force of the shot as it sprays by you, but nothing hits the mark this time. The ringing is starting to fade as you crawl towards where your gun landed, but you can feel Bro's footsteps approaching. Another pump of the shotgun. You're just a finger's length away from the gun, but it's too late. By the time you get hold of it and turn, he'll have finished you off. You close your eyes and listen to the sound of rain against the eave. So peaceful. A low rumble of thunder shakes the balcony beneath you, and you wait for the sound of release. You hear the gunshot, but it's not the explosive burst like before. This one sounds more sharp and direct. You hear a groan and then sound of metal hitting the concrete balcony floor before a slumping thud follows. You open your eyes and you're still here, still alive. You look back and see Bro slumped against the wall, beady eyes looking towards you, but not at you. Beyond him you see McKenna, gun still raised and a hint of smoke coming from his barrel. "You okay, boss?" he calls out as he comes to his feet. You slur out a yes, but you have no idea, really. You look down at your body and can see blood stains on your right hand and feel the trickle of blood coming down your face and inside your coat. Daniels is coming up the stairs full speed. McKenna tells you to stay there as he motions silently for Daniels to join him at the other door. Poor Daniels looks down at you and can't hold back a grimace. McKenna unlocks the door to room 207 and immediately screaming starts to emanate from inside. You feel the ringing coming back into your ear and you try to plug it with your now bloody hand. Over the screams, McKenna is yelling at someone inside to put the weapon down. A man's voice yells back for them to get back or he'll kill her. A voice, female, just screams. The back and forth goes on for a few seconds and you realize that something is about to go horribly wrong. You have to get yourself up. Grasping the rail with your left hand, you pull yourself up to your knees and struggle to your feet. You feel lightheaded and start to wobble. Reaching a hand out, you steady yourself against the door frame to Bro's room. Looking down, you see Bro's lifeless body still staring off into the void, the shotgun resting gently in his right arm. You grab hold of the weapon and move inside Bro's room. You notice a camera is set up on a tripod and is facing the wall of the adjoining room, a hole cut into the paper-thin barrier. You press your eye against the viewer and can see David's clearly, standing on the side of the bed, looming over an hysterical Lily. She's tied to the bed, trying her best not to move despite the terror in her eyes and voice, because David's has a weapon against her throat. A machete, you think. You can't see McKenna in the shot, but he's barking at David's to drop the weapon, or he'll blast him like he did Bro. David's eyes look wild, and his free hand is waving around frantically, motioning the men to back out. You can't shoot David's. The risk of the blade cutting Lily's throat is too great. But a distraction. Something to get him to move. You take your eye away from the viewer, and angling the gun to where it will fire into the room behind David's, you pull the trigger. The force from the shot pushes you back onto Bro's bed, and you hear another single shot go off, followed by more screaming from Lily. You feel the wind knocked out of you, and you wonder if everything's all right in the other room. After taking several deep breaths, you pull yourself up and struggle to the doorway. There you see David's lying on the floor, blood pouring from his head, McKenna standing over him. Daniels is untying Lily from her bed and placing a blanket around her shoulders. The poor girl still screaming, but not as loudly as before. McKenna turns to see you enter and rushes over to check on you. He leads you to a chair and tells you to take off your coat. Looks like you have a nice gash on your right arm to go with the left from the last night, he chuckles. Squinting at your face, he says that he can't see any shot embedded there. Looks mostly like splintered wood. Still, you need to go to the hospital. You wave him off and tell him that you just need a sip of water, and for him to call this in. Water. You suddenly realize how dry your mouth feels. You look over at Lily, huddled under the blanket, hair wet and shivering, Daniel's arm around her, trying to keep her calm. You can hear the same words over and over, mumbling out from her. He said he loved me. He said he loved me. Over and over. 2 ambulances arrive with another police car. After getting checked out by the medic, your wounds are considered mostly superficial. They put your arm in a sling and tell you it would be best if you came to the hospital to get a proper checkup, but you shrug them off and tell them to take care of Lily first. They load her up and you tell Daniels to go along with her. Make sure she feels comfortable until her grandmother arrives. The other ambulance loads up David's and Bro's bodies, a sight that causes Lily to start sobbing again as Daniels closes the door to her ambulance. You tell the new officer to radio the station and have someone bring Mrs. Florence to the hospital to reunite with her granddaughter. No mention by you of her possible involvement in these crimes. McKenna drives you and Mr. Rowland back to the station. He's quietly sobbing in the back seat. Calder should already be there waiting for his friend. Police Chief O'Reilly is waiting to congratulate you on a job well done as you enter the station. He looks you over and asks if you need to go to the hospital. Like the others, you shrug him off. You'll let McKenna take the lead on the interview with Rowland and Calder. He's earned it. O'Reilly gives you a look and tells you the bad news. Calder is dead. Shot himself when the police arrived. Dellum had tried to detain him like you had requested, but Calder pulled a knife on him and then raced into the office and locked himself inside. Burned up everything in the safe before they could get in there. Tried to pull apart the little contraption beneath the desk too, but they have a team already tracking where the wires are running. It's all in hand. It looks like Rowland is where the case ends. Just do your best to get a confession. He walks off and McKenna gives you a look, but doesn't mention anything about leaving Calder in the hands of Dellum. You advise McKenna to stay calm. Rowland will probably try to stonewall him, and that's okay. You have the evidence to put him at the scene, and the reel is the trump card. With Calder dead, they can just say they found the film reel at Rowland's house. That makes it all clean. The key is to get info on PB, and the case will really get legs. McKenna just glares at you and heads into the interview room. Despite the sobbing earlier, Rowland proves adept at stonewalling. Why is his footprint on the windowsill? McKenna asks. He probably left the mark during an inspection. It's clearly positioned coming into the room, though. He doesn't know. He may have popped it up there doing some rearrangements. His fingerprints are on the inside and outside of the window frame. Once again, just regular inspections of the room and hotel. In fact, he had talked with the gardener when he arrived that evening and told him that area needed some trimming. He probably rested his hand on the frame while explaining what he wanted. Well, what about the prints on the leather strap? The manager had asked him to go look in the room after Mrs. Florence and Miss Lily were removed. He must have touched it then. The woolen fibers on the bed? Who's to say they were his? The ether-soaked coat in the closet at his house? He had been in the room after the discovery of Miss Lily. He must have gotten the smell on his coat that way. Then why hide it? Because he didn't want to be put in the frame. Every block from Rowland, you see McKenna get more and more agitated. Why did you run then? He panicked. You were going to arrest him. Why run to the lookout where Davids and Lily were at? The lookout is close to his house.
He figured he could hide out for a little while. Once the two of you got your heads back on straight, you'd see he wasn't a criminal. How does he know David's? He doesn't. They're both from Charleston, South Carolina, McKenna shoots back. Lots of people are from there. Why did their cleaner bro run a film studio in Cavender? Roland pauses for a moment, but responds calmly. He doesn't know this bro. Even if he did, why would he know about the man's hobbies? McKenna looks like he's about to lose it, so you signal for him to follow you outside. Roland offers condolences to you on the damage to your face as you open the door. McKenna whips around, but you wrangle him into the hallway. You see Roland's smile curl up as you close the door. McKenna punches the wall. The bastard won't own up to anything, he lets out with a heavy sigh. They'll have to use the real, and he doesn't want to be that cop. The kind of cop you are. He got into this job for a fresh start, to do the right thing for once in his life. You look at him and feel for once the selfishness of your actions. Getting McKenna roped into your mission to escape back to MCS. Doing the same dirty tricks that got you into Sex Crimes Division in the first place. There has to be a way to do this the right way. You tell McKenna to wait, and you go back to the front desk and ask Claire if any of the burnt evidence from Calder's office has been retrieved. Yes, it's just arrived and she was about to send it to the evidence locker. You ask for it and she hands it over to you. A manila-colored envelope with a charred film reel and some burnt papers. You take it to your desk and pour out the evidence. They look like they were index cards. You didn't see index cards anywhere in Calder's office or the safe before. Perhaps Calder kept them on his person. You look at each one, trying to make out anything on them. Then you find it. A half-burnt index card with PB written on the top. Address is obscured by burn marks, but you can just make out that it is in Gulf Breeze. Going back to the street, you see the two capital B's and what looks like the word Lane behind them. You go to Claire and ask her if she knows of any roads in Gulf Breeze that have those two words, both starting with B, that are designated as lanes. She thinks for a second. She can think of two, Bluebird and Briar's Branch. You think to yourself that Briar's Branch is a pretty poor neighborhood. Unlikely anyone from there would be commissioning this kind of criminal activity. Can she do you a favor? Go to the courthouse across the street and speak with the assessor's office. Ask them to pull every address on Bluebird Lane and bring back any of them with a resident whose initials are PB. She gets ready to leave, but remembers that they found a dog tag on David's at the scene, and also a letter addressed from the Landmark Hotel. You ask for the tags and she hands them over to you. The name reveals the connection. David's real name is Peter Rowland. You head back to McKenna and tell him of the revelation about David's. McKenna is ready to go back in to grill Rowland with this new information, but you tell him to hold up. Once Claire comes back with the name of the address, McKenna can hit him with that too. One more thing. Rowland doesn't know that Calder is dead. McKenna can use that to his advantage. Say that Calder has given up the name and is ready to talk. It'll probably be the thing that finally breaks him. It might be dirty, but it's not illegal. McKenna agrees and the two of you wait for Claire to return.
About an hour later, Claire comes bounding down the hallway towards you. She tells you she's found two addresses on Bluebird Lane with residents having PB as initials. One is Philomena Broussard. She's a sole femme owner, a widow lady. The other is startling. Peter Banyan, city councilman, wealthy heir to the Banyan oil business, and son of Silas Banyan, the owner of the Landmark Hotel. McKenna gets a glint in his eye, and he gets ready to head back in. You're hesitant to let him go forward, though. If Peter Banyan is involved, This is going to explode all over the town. Not all of it good either. Your face tingles with a twitchy nervousness, but McKenna has already swung open the door before you can think to stop him. McKenna starts by delivering his condolences to Roland on the loss of his brother. Roland acts like he doesn't know what he's talking about at first, but McKenna slams down the dog tags on the table. Roland starts to stutter, but it's just a coincidence. But McKenna doesn't let him wriggle away. Roland is wrapped up in all of this, and he's going down for it for a long time. Roland's facade is cracking, and you decide to go for it. Peter Banyan. Roland's eyes start to widen, and you can see the color fading from his face. He tries to compose himself, but McKenna is too quick. He tells him Calder has just told them everything about their relationship with Banyan, making him those nasty films. They'll be picking him up next, and it looks like Calder will be getting the deal of the century. Real cushy white-collar prison, nice meals, and even some opportunities to check out from time to time. Roland, he'll be going to whatever the worst prison there is in the state of Mississippi, and McKenna will make sure everyone there knows what he did. What does he think the prisoners and the guards will do to him when they find out what kind of crimes he's been doing? Roland's turned the color of the white walls around him. No longer the cocky adversary, he looks as peaked as Dellum from earlier. He hesitates, and then asks what the two of you want to know. McKenna starts with the easy stuff. What were their roles in all of this? David's job was to lure the girls. He wrote ads in Lonely Hearts magazines and waited for the women to respond. Once he got them hooked, he'd invite them down to the landmark. He'd tell them not to mention it to anyone. That was easy, of course. No woman wants people to know about their intimate affairs. Lonely women from different parts of the country suddenly disappearing? Too easy. Bro's job was to set up and maintain the cameras and develop the film. That's all. Didn't like the guy either. Yankee. Said he was a perpetual traveler. Would come in town only for the events, as he called them. Calder was the brains. He put the team together, had the clients, made sure each mission was carried out with precision. Real military man. And Roland's job is just to assist his brother when necessary and to dispose of the bodies. And where are those bodies? Buried in Roland's backyard by the tool shed. How many? 4 women. David's did all of the killing? Yes, it was his gift. Now on to Lily. Why her and the grandmother? Lily was a unique case. She had to bring her grandmother. The woman was just too overprotective. Roland had suggested David's drop her, but he couldn't get enough of her letters. Always sent a photo with it, too. Pretty steamy stuff. Calder didn't want to start over from scratch either. These missions take time, and the clients were becoming more and more demanding. Davids came up with a scheme for her to act severely depressed, so they would need to come and see a specialist at the landmark. It just so happened that Mrs. Florence had heard of the landmark through a friend who had used their services several years ago when it was a legitimate wellness spa. Why the magnet and the liquid iron? A stupid plan concocted by Bro. He'd heard of wild experiments where people would have hallucinations and seizures when exposed to too much magnetism. It didn't work on Lily when Davids tried it out in the lobby, so they went back to the old plan. Roland would sneak in after Davids and Lily had sex, knock her out with ether, and then they'd rape and kill her. This time they'd wait for Florence to return and kill her too. 2 for 1. Roland says all of this with little to no emotion. And the film was for Peter Banyan, you say. Roland pauses, but confirms with a heavy sigh. He was the one who delivered the reels to the clients, and Banyan was to get the film reel tomorrow. What other clients do you work for? He asked for a pen and paper. You oblige him and he gets ready to write, but looks at you and McKenna first. If he does this, you're going to take care of him, right? You tell him that if the information passes, they'll make sure that he gets the same deal they were offering Calder. He writes down the names and addresses of the others, a total of 10 men, several from Mississippi, but also Alabama, Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Tennessee. You don't recognize any of them, but Roland assures you they are big deals. Just make sure you take care of him is all he requests as you and McKenna step out into the corridor once more. As the door shuts, you grab McKenna by the shoulders and congratulate him. He did it. McKenna smiles for the first time since the stakeout at Bro's office. You tell him you'll go make the call to the prosecutor, but are interrupted by the chief of police who has walked up behind you. Why do you need to call the prosecutor, he asks. Thought you were just getting a confession. No need to involve him in all of this. McKenna speaks up excitedly, telling the chief that they've got the names of the clients connected to the pornography ring. When he mentions Banion's name, though, the chief's face turns stone, and he stops the conversation immediately. McKenna tells him that Roland confessed that Peter Banion is a client of theirs. He tries to tell the chief they've got 10 names, and he turns to you to produce the paper, but you hold it in your coat. Instead, you produce the note card. He scoffs at the half-burnt note. It's not even a complete address. How can you be sure it's Banion? You tell the chief that Roland has confirmed it to be Banion, and the chief says that's not reliable enough. Of course he would say a big name. Probably wants to get his sentence reduced. McKenna looks at you confused, and the chief says that even if you had a list of names right then and there, he'd just throw it in the trash. No way you can trust a man of Roland's ilk. He asks to see the confession, and you place it in his hand. Looking over it, he says, Good. Just make sure you redact the information about Banion, and this'll pass. Honestly, he can't believe that either of you would ever think that a man like Banion could be involved in this. That would just lead to another scandal, and the police can't afford one of those after what happened last time. He looks directly at you as he says that. Book Roland and move on. He starts to walk up the corridor, but turns and tells you that he has good news. He's already put in for you and McKenna a promotion. You'll be getting back on MCS like you wanted, and McKenna can join you. Daniels is also getting put in for accommodations. He stands there staring at you, expecting some kind of thanks, but all you can do is look down at the ground, while McKenna just stares blankly back at him. Well, don't thank me all at once, he says as he turns and heads back to his office. You look back at McKenna, and you can see that he's ready to blow. Face flushed, eyes staring down at the floor now, with a focus of rage you remember all too well. You tell him you're sorry, but once you heard Banion's name, you knew this was where it was going to end. You were hopeful, but in the end, money, prestige, that's what rules everything around here. The explanation doesn't sit well with McKenna, and he storms out of the station. You see Jacob Jarrow coming up the hallway. He notices your face and says, What's wrong? Didn't you just solve the case? You know what's going on, Jacob. Didn't get what you wanted in the end? Do we ever? Oh well. You tell him you'll get back with him about Reggie's later, but he waves it off and says, Take your time. I'd rather drink with you when you're less miserable.
You walk slowly back to the front desk and ask Claire if there's any evidence you need to look at before you leave.
She produces a duffel bag and says it looks like there's some jewelry and cash in here. You take the items and head out of the station, greeted by the warm Mississippi breeze. At least you can return Mrs. Florence's other lost treasures to her. You're greeted at the hospital by a beaming Miss Florence as she walks up to you, places her hands on either side of your face, and pulls you in to give you a kiss on your forehead. She thanks you so much for what you've done, saving her Lily. You tell her you're just trying to do your job. You also mention to her that all of the parties involved have been accounted for.
Mr. Rowland has confessed to his crimes, and the others are dead. She says that's just fine with her. Those men got what they deserved. She thanks you again for your diligence in the case and for bringing back her Lily. You look in Lily's direction, but the girl just lies there, eyes wide and lifeless. She'll probably have to stay this way for some time, Florence says. The nurses say she has fits of rage when she's not sedated. They'll plan to leave in a few days to return home to Missouri, where she'll be checked into a mental health facility. You return the stolen goods to her and wish them well. As you turn to leave, you feel her arms wrap around you tightly once more. She pulls you in as close as she can and whispers, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." The next morning around 7 a.m., you sit in the passenger seat of your sedan. McKenna is behind the wheel. Neither of you chose to take the promotion, leaving both of your resignations on the chief's desk last night. He'll find them around 9 a.m. when he walks in. It'll be too late by then, though. Neither of you can work for this system. McKenna is too convicted and you're too burnt out. Daniels will do just fine where he's at. He's got that wife and baby to think about. Two people like you, with nothing to lose. Perhaps you both can start over as private investigators somewhere far from here. Just one thing left to do, though. The school bus pulls up and the two Banyan children run out to meet it, backpacks weighing them down the whole way. You look over the letters from the women to David's again, trying to find the courage to continue what you're planning to do. You look back to the house and see Peter Banyan exiting and getting into his car, a red convertible. He slowly backs out the driveway and turns off towards downtown. As the sporty vehicle moves out of sight, you get ready to get out of the car, but you notice in the window Miss Banyan walking through the living room. You hesitate once more. Is this what you really should be doing? But then you pull out that letter, the one from Lily at the Landmark Hotel, and read it once more for your courage. I don't understand why you did it, but I still trust you. I'm still waiting for you. Come and find me, and let's go away together. I love you. Signed, your Lily. You exit the vehicle, film reel in hand with a note for PB attached to it and a letter from you. Stepping across the road and up the walkway to the front door, you knock. You hear the kind voice of Mrs. Banyan saying, "I'll be right there." At that, you leave the parcel on the front doormat and walk back to the car. As McKenna pulls off the curb, you look in the rearview mirror and can see Mrs. Banyan opening the door, noticing the parcel and picking it up, and reading the letter. You hate that she has to see it, that this will rip her life apart. But it's not you, it's Banyan. One down, you think, and you hear McKenna say the same as Gulf breeze fades from the rearview mirror. You close your eyes and feel like you can rest easy for the first time in a long while.